Life is beautiful, but sometimes it can feel like a battle. Battling to make ends meet financially. Battling to find time for your family or yourself. Battling to get more out of less. Battling to resist illness. Battling to get well. Battling to be recognized and appreciated. Battling fears and insecurities. All of this battling can certainly take its toll. How can we prepare for the trials and challenges we face today and the years to come? What can we do to prepare our children who will be forced to confront the personal, economic, and social challenges that'll have rippling effects worldwide? Today, we have someone who knows. She's an expert in overcoming challenges, in bravery and leadership, and her name is Rebecca Halstead. She graduated from the United States Military Academy with a Bachelor of Science degree in 1981 and was a member of the second Academy class that included women. Halstead is a graduate of the Army's Ordnance Officer Basic Course and Ordnance Officer Advanced Course. She obtained a Master of Military Art and Science degree from the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas in 1993, and in 2000, she received a Master of Science degree in National Resource Strategy from the National War College, Fort McNair, Washington, D.C. In September 2004, she was assigned as Commander, 3rd Corps Support Command, including deployment to Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom. In August 2004, she was promoted to Brigadier General and is the first female graduate of West Point to attain general officer rank. General Halstead's military awards and decorations include the Distinguished Service Medal, the Defense Superior Service Medal, 2 awards of the Legion of Merit, the Bronze Star Medal, 5 awards of the Meritorious Service Medal, 2 awards of the Army Commendation Medal, and the Army Achievement Medal. She also earned the Air Assault Badge and the Army Staff Identification Badge. Becky, welcome to the Wellness Spotlight.
Thanks for having me today.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And
Well, I grew up in New York State, so not too far from here, in upstate New York, in the middle of the state. And I say my claim to fame is I'm just a country girl from a town with no traffic lights, because we count the number of cows versus people in our small town. But my dad worked for IBM, and it was in Wiltseyville, New York. So I grew up for the most part there. We moved all over the country my first 8 years of life, but that's where I went to high school, and from there went to West Point. So.
Now, was anybody in your family in the military?
No, well, my dad, when he left high school, he was 4 years in the Air Force, and then he went into IBM. So, I had seen his Air Force uniform and his picture when he was a kid, and I had one uncle in the Navy in World War II, but other than that, nobody had ever served in the military. So I was not like I was around it.
Now, my dad was in the Air Force also.
Oh, okay, very good.
But I didn't make it into the military. What made you join?
Well, that's because it was my mother who got me to join versus my dad. I think my dad actually had more apprehension, but my mom was reading in the newspaper in 1976, might have been the fall of '75, that they were letting women go into the academies, that the academies were going to be opening up, and this was going to be something new because they had traditionally been all male. So she's reading the newspaper article, and she says, "I think this sounds just like you." And I looked around the room, and I was the only one in the room. So I was a junior in high school at the time. And so she started to read the article about what they look for in high school students to attend the academies. She goes, "I think you should try." So at that point in my life, I pretty much knew what I was going to do. I was going to go to Ithaca College. I was going to be a gym teacher. I was going to minor in music. I was going to live in the gym the rest of my life, be a coach and gym teacher, because that's what I loved in high school. So I said, okay, well, if you help me, Mom, if you help me go through this nomination process, which is very intense, you have to write letters to your congressmen and senators, and then you have to get nominated by them, then you have to get accepted by the academy. So if you'll help me, I'll try. Because when I had read the requirements, I was like, there's no way that I'll get accepted. So I felt pretty easy telling my mom I would go ahead and try because I had no concern that I would be accepted. I was pretty sure I wasn't going to. So when I did get accepted, I got nominated and then accepted by West Point. Then I was in a little bit of a quandary, but I had to say yes. I mean, there's no way I could say no. It was just too big. You know, nobody in my high school had ever graduated from West Point. So I felt like it was God's calling, you know. I mean, I wouldn't get accepted if I wasn't meant to go, is how I felt about it. And I grew up in a very strong Christian, faithful home, and my parents were kind of drilling that into me. And I said, okay, I'll go. Yeah, I'm not going to say I'm going to graduate, but I'll at least go and try. So that's what happened.
And then you went to West Point.
I did.
What was that like?
Well, I'll put it to you like this. The last day that you're in your hometown as a senior and the whole town is proud of you and they're sending you off to West Point, that's the highest day of your life. The lowest day of your life is the first day at West Point. I mean, they take you from civilian to military in a matter of hours. You know, all the women had their hair, everybody had their hair cut. You know, the men had it shaved. We had it cut really short. Then they take you out of your civilian clothes and they lock your civilian clothes up and they put you in a uniform. They teach you how to march, teach you how to salute, tell you have 4 answers. Yes, sir. No, sir. No excuse, sir. Sir, I do not understand. And those are your 4 answers, replies, responses for the next year. And it was hard. I mean, it was definitely hard, but it was absolutely worth it.
Now, you were in the military for about 20 years?
27.
27?
Yes.
And you've retired now?
Yes.
You had a serious challenge with your health.
That's correct.
And now you're out of the military. Are you out of the military because of that health challenge that you had?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you mind speaking about it?
No, I don't mind at all. In 2005, I was diagnosed with chronic fibromyalgia. Now, it took well over a year to get that diagnosis, and some people argue about whether fibromyalgia is a disease or not a disease. I don't get into that argument. What I tell people is Becky Halstead had a disease. Call it whatever you want. I was in chronic pain and very, very difficult for me to function. So, and it really, a diagnosis for me was not bad news. A diagnosis was good news because it took so long to get anybody to even be able to figure out what was going on. And I had seen neurologists and rheumatologists and, you know, everybody and their brother. So for me, the diagnosis actually was almost comforting to at least have something to work with. So it's a musculoskeletal disease related a lot to, you know, the stressors, the physical stressors that you have, and people say, well, what's it like to have fibromyalgia? I said, well, it's kind of like having the flu all the time. I mean, you ache all the time. If I could describe my body, it would be like one big bruise. It hurt to have the water in the shower touch my skin, for instance. So you can imagine what it feels like to wear, you know, 60 to 70 pounds of gear on your body if the water in the shower hurts your skin. But at any rate, in 2005, I was diagnosed. And that was the spring of the year I deployed to combat. Now, the Army treated me by initially giving me an enormous amount of prescription drugs. I remember going home the first time with my brown bag of bottles, and I went home and I dutifully read all the details about each prescription. I wanted to know the side effects, I wanted to know what it was for, and very interesting to me was at least 3 of them were for antidepressant. They were antidepressants. And so I immediately called my doctor and I said, Dr. Irwin, anybody that knows me knows I am not a depressed person. I mean, I'm a very positive, high-energy, uplifting person. And he says, no, but with fibromyalgia, you will be depressed. And I said, wow, now that's a horrible diagnosis. And I said, well, why do you say that? And he says, well, because people with chronic pain syndromes, the more pain they're in, the less they do. The less they do, the more they withdraw. The more they withdraw, they start to internalize that. They stay away from society, and they get depressed.
They feel like a prisoner in their own body.
Prisoner in their own body, and then become a prisoner in their own home. So I thought, well, okay, that makes sense to me, but that's not going to happen to me because I don't have the ability to withdraw. I mean, first of all, I'm going to combat with 20,000 soldiers. I have this huge responsibility. I don't think I'll be withdrawing anywhere. In hindsight, I mean, so that was 2005. I retired in 2008. Those were very tough 3 years. It was tough to hide the fact that I had fibromyalgia, which I did. I really did not want people to know. It's like in anything in life, if people know you have a problem like that, then anything that they think you might have done, you could have made a better decision. You could have, provided a better output. They'll blame it. Yeah, they'll blame it on that, and it's, so. And I didn't want people to look at me like a disease walking into the room. So at any rate, I somewhat kept that very, very private. When I deployed at the end of that year of 2005 in September, I had taken the prescription drugs enough to know that I better not take them while I'm deployed, because although they do curb the pain, and although they do help you sleep a little bit, I would wake up feeling hungover in the morning. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't do that in the military. I mean, it's at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're getting ready to go out and run 4 miles and do your push-ups and your sit-ups. You can maybe get away with that a little bit in garrison, but my goodness, in combat, it's 24 hours, 7 days a week. We do operations all night long. So I said, when I deploy, I'm not taking any of these prescription drugs. And I didn't. I took none. And my rationale was, I already knew the drugs were not actually curing the disease. I mean, they were just helping me feel better. So, and I also knew the disease was not going to kill me. I mean, I'm going to be in pain, but the pain's not going to kill me.
So you had this affliction, and you went through the system that the military had available for you, and it seemed like you weren't getting anywhere. Then what happened?
Well, I deployed for the whole year, came back. Was really pretty, I was pretty, you're worn out after a year of combat with or without a disease. So I came back and I thought, maybe back in the States, I could get some normalcy to my life. Now, let me interject about my true introduction to chiropractic, because that made a huge difference for me. When I came back in the middle of my tour of duty in Iraq, they call it R&R leave, you get 2 weeks off. I came back to West Point, New York, and I spoke at a conference there. They were honoring 30 years of women going to West Point. So they asked me if I would be a keynote speaker, so I said sure. Which, of course, most people thought I was crazy because I was 2 weeks on vacation from combat and I'm going to West Point to speak, but whatever. It was an important cause. And while I was there, my mom sat next to this woman who was the sister of one of my classmates, and her name is Dr. Carol Ann Malizia, and she's in Newburgh, New York.
Great lady, I know her very well.
She's a wonderful, wonderful person, high energy. So my mom, she was telling my mom, she thought she was just really enjoyed my keynote address at dinner, and my mom says, yes, well, we're very proud of her. And she goes, I don't know if you know her or not, but she's actually quite ill. And Carol Ann said, would you mind my asking? And of course, my mother, she has fibromyalgia. So immediately Dr. Carol Ann decides to find me in the hallway. Now you have to envision this. I'm in my military uniform. I'm a warrior, right, back from combat. She grabs me in the hallway in the academic building at West Point where we were having the conference, and she puts her finger in my chest and she says, I'm telling you, you don't have to live in chronic pain. I said, excuse me, and who are you? And so she says, oh, I'm Dr. Carol Ann Malizia. Well, I recognize the last name because of Mary Ann being my classmate. So we laughed a little bit, introduced ourselves. And I had gone to a chiropractor when I would go home to visit my parents. My dad had suggested several years before that, because I was complaining of aching a lot. And I just took it as I'm getting older. The Army's beat me up pretty good, rappelling out of helicopters, 12-mile foot marches with, full gear. So I just took it as kind of a normal sequence in my life. But when I would go to the chiropractor, I always came out of the chiropractor feeling better. There was always relief. There was just, it's almost hard to describe, but I always felt better. And I would think about the fact that, well, I could name all the doctors I had seen for the last 2 years in the military, trying to figure out what was wrong with me, and I didn't get any relief coming out of their offices. So she re-energized the thought that I should probably consistently see a chiropractor. So she says, I'm going to help you. And I said, well, I appreciate that, but I'm leaving tomorrow and I'm going back to Iraq, and there's not much you can help me in Iraq. So I'll contact you when I get back. When I was delinquent, I didn't do that. But when I retired, I contacted Dr. Carol Ann, and she said, I'm going to help you. And now 3 years later, I take no prescriptive drugs. I am definitely, I have fibromyalgia. I'll probably always have fibromyalgia, but I don't believe it'll ever go to a chronic state anymore. I can take a shower without being in pain. I actually have good days. See, what I was guilty of, found myself guilty of, was I accepted the disease. And I accepted that's just the way it's going to be. I'm going to live in chronic pain the rest of my life. And I think that was a really big mistake. What I have learned from chiropractors is the body was definitely created to heal itself, that the adjustment really restores functionality to your body, and that a lot of what my disease and many of these chronic pain diseases are related to is, the wrong messaging with the nervous system. I mean, it makes sense. If your computer, if the operating system on your computer is all messed up, you can't use the programs. Right. And so your body can't use the programs it was designed to use if your nervous system's all screwed up. So anyhow, I started really working with her, and I changed completely my nutrition, completely. I started all whole food supplements, and so we can talk more about that. But I've done all the talking now. I better let you ask a question.
Thanks. It's a fascinating story. Now, it's great that you had a healing experience. You're doing much better. Did you tell the doctors back in the military what happened? Well,
after you retire, you kind of become they. When you're in, you're we. When you're out, you're they. I most certainly have. I currently am a spokesperson for the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, and that foundation is strictly focused on, their mission is positive press for chiropractic, educating people about the value of chiropractic care for your health and wellness, for your health care program. So what I have done is I have gone to the military and started to tell my story to the military about how much healthier I am, how much better off I am. And in that process, what I discovered is that chiropractic is actually a benefit for military, for veterans at VA centers, for military active duty, not families yet, but active duty. The challenge is that we only have chiropractors at 25% of our treatment facilities on the active duty side. So, and TRICARE doesn't cover chiropractic. So, unlike almost everything else, if I go to the doctor in the military and he or she says, I need to see a certain type of doctor or I need a certain type of x-ray or whatever, if the treatment facility doesn't have it, I go off post to get it, TRICARE covers it, but not with chiropractic, so it's crazy. Now, I've already sat down with the deputy director of TRICARE, the Rear Admiral who is in charge, and sat down with her to try to understand why does TRICARE not cover it, what are the possibilities of TRICARE covering it. And so we're making some progress there. I do that with the foundation. That's one of the things that they do, I think, in a very positive way. On the VA side, for any veterans that are listening, the veterans, they actually have a better program, although most of them don't know the program. They're not educated on it. So we also have on the foundation website, we have the regulations so that veterans can actually go to it and see what their rights are. So if I am a veteran, so if I go to a VA center and there's no chiropractor, and I know that I need to see a chiropractor, I can say, hey, I know I need to see a chiropractor. I know it's a benefit of mine. So you can at least refer me to one. If they won't do that, I can actually appeal. There's an appeals process. Mm-hmm. And so, but the bottom line is they can refer me to a chiropractor and they have a system by which the chiropractor will get paid. unlike active duty. So that's also good news for the chiropractors, because too many chiropractors are donating out of the goodness of their heart their services to the military. And we appreciate that. And we were talking about that earlier. There's many different organizations, and we really do appreciate that. But you know what? You shouldn't have to volunteer your time to take care of me when it's a benefit that Congress says is mine. In 2000, they said that the military should have chiropractic coverage.
And what you're saying is true, and the Association of New Jersey Chiropractors has signed a covenant where there are chiropractors throughout the state that have agreed to step up and be able to treat veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan at no charge for a certain period of time, you know, as soon as they've come back, to be able to help them. Right,
that's the Army One Source Covenant, which is, I know the Congress of, what's COXA stand for? The Congress of Chiropractic, whatever. But it's all the 50 states, and they are spearheading that one Army One Source Covenant in many different states. And I don't know how many we have now, but I think we're almost in the double digits of states that have signed that covenant. And it's a wonderful partnership between the chiropractic community and our military and veterans. So I really applaud the chiropractic community at large for wanting to take care of our military. And that will help give visibility to DOD and our Congress to say, this is wonderful, but go back and review the paperwork. In 2000, you gave it to us as a benefit. So let's push this and make it happen.
In the minutes that we have remaining, Becky, what I'd like to do is focus on leadership.
Okay. Favorite subject.
Now, and since you've retired, well, you haven't really retired because now you have a new business that you've started. Could you talk a couple of minutes about that, and also speak about leadership, about different styles of leadership, and about how people can take better personal responsibility to be able to create the kind of life that they're dreaming about but haven't been able to realize yet?
Okay, sure. You're correct. I retired from the Army, but I'm not retired. So last year in 2010, I started my own company called Steadfast Leadership. And I said company, but it's just me. So it's a company of one. I went from Army of one to company of one. And the whole focus is on leadership. The primary message that I try to send is that, you know, you may be listening and say, well, I don't lead anybody. Yes, you do. You lead yourself. So the first person you must lead is you. So whether you're a spouse, you're, you know, a sister, a brother, you're in the church, you're in the community, you know, you don't have to have an office full of people that you lead, or 20,000 soldiers in Iraq. You have to lead yourself. And so my message on leadership is that, you know, sit down and ask yourself, what are the values that are most important to you? Just, you know, write a list of 10. Is it having integrity? Is it being committed? Is it, you know, duty, honor, country? Whatever those 10 values are, just list them. And then ask yourself, do my behaviors reflect the values that I say are most important to me? And that can be kind of a wake-up call, because, you know, we find that we list a value, but then we can think of a behavior that's not quite aligned with the value. And so the goal there then is figure out, you know, why. Why doesn't the behavior align? So you can figure out ways. Don't change your value, change your behavior.
But the problem is sometimes in what the person believes.
Right.
If there's incongruency between values and behavior, sometimes it's because the person doesn't really believe that they're deserving or worthy of being able to have that thing that they really want that aligns with their values.
Right.
How can a person start with having better beliefs? You know, a lot of people out there are probably having a challenge taking personal responsibility when they feel that so much that's going on around them is due to external circumstances. It's the economy, you know, it's the weather, it's people around them that are giving them a hard time.
Right.
How can a person lead themselves when they're up against tremendous obstacles like that?
Well, first of all, I don't consider anything an obstacle. If it's an obstacle, what you're calling an obstacle, I consider that an opportunity, you know, a challenge. And I think that, you know, remember I said earlier, trust yourself. You know, the number one thing when I was in combat, you know, I could not be worried about, am I going to get shot and killed? I can't be worried about, is every decision I'm going to make be the right decision? No, think positively. I'm going to make the best decisions. Now, I hope to make the best decisions. Reframe the way you think. Don't do the I hope I will, I want to. No, say I am. So, you know, I am going to make the best decisions. So, and I would say that every time you start to want to blame the economy, the weather, my parents, or whatever, stop. And just look in the mirror and go, I hold myself accountable for whatever my day unfolds. I mean, you cannot control the circumstances, but you can control the response to the circumstances. And that comes from within you. And so if you don't think you have the right tools and you want to develop those, well then, you know, we could go into a large discussion on that. You know, well, let me ask you this. What are you watching on TV? What are you reading? What are you doing physically? So I kind of divide it into what I call PMSE. What are you doing physically? What are you doing mentally, spiritually, and emotionally? They're like tanks. If you think of them as a tank, and each tank has to have a full tank of gas, right? It should have a full tank. Keep it topped off. But if it doesn't, at least it can still keep moving if it has a little bit of gas in it, right? So if you look at those as tanks, you can look at those as physical energy, mental energy, spiritual energy, emotional energy. If you run out of fuel in any one of those, it's not going to go anywhere, right? The car's not going to move if it doesn't have gas in it. So it's about managing your energy and not managing your time. So you can't say, oh, I can't go out, I can't work out today because the weather's bad. Well, work out inside. I can't work out today because I don't have enough time. Make time. Make time. You know, I can't volunteer for my church because I don't have time. Yes, you can. What else are you doing that you could do less of? I mean, it's so easy to say I can't instead of saying I can.
And that goes back to values and beliefs and
I think
and
it does.
That's right.
And discipline. I mean, steadfast, when I came up with steadfast leadership, steadfast is an acronym. Okay, S is standard setter, being a standard setter. You know, T is having trust and tenacity. E is encourage and embrace. A is attitude. Well, D is discipline. And this is all about disciplining your mind, disciplining your heart, disciplining yourself physically. And, you know, you may be off the charts physical, right? Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to work out every day. And you look like a specimen of health. But if you're not taking the time every day to do some quiet time, thinking time, devotional time, well, then that spiritual and mental and emotional tanks, they're not getting the attention they need. So there's got to be some sort of a little bit of balance in there. And you know, you surge every once in a while, but keep them all going. And it can be done.
You know, speaking of time, we're out of it.
Okay.
and I just want to take the time right now to be able to say thank you to you, because I know that you got up at 5:30 in the morning and drove down here from West Point to be able to come to East Brunswick and share your message with us. And now you're going to get back in the car and drive another 2 hours back to West Point to get back to the activities that you have planned there. And we really appreciate it. And I also want to acknowledge everybody from Channel 3 who also got up early this morning to be able to come in and be able to help make this program possible.
Well, we thank you for bringing the coffee, and thank you for the invitation, because if somebody today is helped because of what we're doing, then that makes a perfect day.
Becky, thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
This concludes another segment of the East Brunswick Advisory Health Council's Wellness Spotlight. I'm Dr. Ken Friedman, President of the East Brunswick Advisory Health Council, reminding you that wellness works when you work it.